The night sky over Kyiv was supposed to be quiet. Families had gone to sleep, children tucked in by candlelight because the city's power grid was once again unstable. The hum of silence was interrupted only by the occasional bark of dogs in distant neighborhoods. But then, at exactly 2:37 a.m., the sound arrived, a low, thunderous rumble that vibrated through the ground. At first, many thought it was another round of artillery from far away, something familiar after months of war. But this sound was different. It wasn't a single explosion. It was the slicing roar of something cutting through the sky at hypersonic speed. The dreaded whisper spread quickly through bunkers and apartments. Iskander. The Russian Iskander missile system had been feared from the very beginning of the conflict, and like drones or artillery, it was precise, fast, and almost impossible to intercept. Its ability to evade radar, its devastating payload, and the sheer terror it spread made it one of the Kremlin's deadliest tools. And tonight, it was aimed directly at Kyiv, in the underground metro stations where families huddled. A mother clutched her daughter close, her voice trembled as she whispered, "Stay down, don't listen, just close your eyes." But the child couldn't ignore the distant echoes. The air raid sirens wailed across Kyiv, rising in pitch like a citywide scream. Ukrainian air defense crews were already scrambling. Operators sat before glowing green radar screens in a hardened bunker, their eyes sharp, hands steady, but their hearts racing. "Object detected, trajectory incoming." "Iskander confirmed," shouted one operator. Another voice cracked through the comms. "Kyiv is the target." Outside, soldiers loaded interceptor missiles onto launchers, their faces illuminated by the pale glow of floodlights. They had seconds, maybe minutes, to react. Against the Iskander, time was never a luxury. The first strike landed near the outskirts of Kyiv. The ground shook violently as a fireball rose, painting the horizon orange. The shockwave shattered windows in homes miles away. Families screamed, clinging to one another in darkness. A grandmother whispered prayers, while her grandson covered her ears, desperate to shield her from the deafening blast. Then came the second missile. This one hit closer to the city center, a massive explosion near a railway junction that sent cargo containers flying like toys. The rail lines, a lifeline for supplies and evacuations, twisted and burned under the inferno. Firefighters raced through the chaos, sirens wailing as embers rained down from the night sky. Kyiv was under fire again, but this time it felt different. This wasn't random shelling. This was a direct, calculated strike designed to cripple the city. Meanwhile in Moscow, Kremlin officials watched satellite feeds and listened to reports. The message was clear: Russia wanted to remind Ukraine and the world of its reach, of its ability to unleash devastation whenever it chose.
But what they didn't expect was Kyiv's resilience. As dawn began to break, smoke still rising from craters, Ukrainian President Zelensky addressed the nation. His face was tired, eyes heavy, but his voice carried steel. "They think missiles will break us. They think fear will silence us. But every strike only strengthens our resolve. Kyiv stands. Ukraine stands." The camera zoomed in on him as he spoke from an undisclosed location. Behind him, the Ukrainian flag draped across a concrete wall, a silent reminder that even in war, symbols matter. In the streets above, civilians began to emerge. Shop owners cleared debris, firefighters extinguished the last flames, and medics rushed to treat the wounded. A boy, no older than 10, handed out bread he had saved to neighbors who had lost everything in the blast. His small gesture became a moment of hope, circulating on social media with the caption, "Even in darkness, we share light." But deep underground, Ukrainian military planners gathered around a table, maps spread out, coffee cups untouched. The question weighed heavily: how do you defend against the unstoppable? They knew Iskander missiles couldn't be intercepted reliably. Their speed and maneuverability gave them an almost mythical status on the battlefield. But Ukraine also knew one truth: for every missile launched, Russia's stockpile diminished. And if they could survive long enough, the Kremlin's terror would run dry. The meeting ended with a chilling order: strengthen the defenses around Kyiv. Prepare countermeasures. Tonight was not the last. And indeed, it wasn't. 2 nights later, the sirens wailed again. This time, the strikes weren't just on infrastructure, they were aimed at psychological targets: schools, hospitals, residential blocks. Russia wanted to crush the spirit of Kyiv. But with every strike, the people grew more defiant. Musicians brought their violins into subway shelters, playing classical melodies to calm terrified children. Volunteers distributed warm meals, holding flashlights as makeshift lanterns. In the face of destruction, humanity bloomed like stubborn flowers through cracks in concrete. Still, the fear remained. For every Ukrainian who tried to live normally, there was the constant shadow of the next missile. And somewhere in the skies above Belarus, more Iskander systems were being prepared, their warheads waiting for the Kremlin's next order. The battle for Kyiv's survival had entered a new chapter. And the world was watching. The city of Kyiv had barely begun to recover from the shock of the first wave when news of another incoming strike spread like wildfire. Sirens blared once more, echoing through every street, every alley, every heart. Mothers pulled their children closer, elderly residents whispered prayers, and soldiers braced themselves for what they already knew was inevitable. The Iskander missile was not just a weapon. It was a message of dominance, a message of fear. As Ukrainian air defense systems scrambled to lock onto the incoming target, the sky lit up with the crackling trails of interceptors. For a brief moment, hope flickered, perhaps this one could be stopped. But the Iskander was no ordinary missile. Its speed, maneuverability, and precision made it one of the deadliest tools in Russia's arsenal. Within seconds, the defenders realized that the weapon had shifted trajectory mid-flight, evading the interceptors with terrifying ease. Then, the impact. A deafening explosion tore through the outskirts of Kyiv, shaking the ground for miles. Windows shattered in unison, doors blew open, alarms wailed across the city. The target this time was not a random building, it was a strategic communication hub used by the Ukrainian military. Flames engulfed the facility as plumes of black smoke rose high into the sky, visible from every corner of the capital. For the Ukrainian command, this was a direct hit to their nerve center. Generals scrambled to re-establish connections with frontline units, radios crackled with broken voices, and chaos rippled through the chain of command. Soldiers on the ground fought to stay coordinated as Russia's strike disrupted their entire network. Meanwhile, in Moscow, Kremlin officials celebrated the success of the strike. State media broadcast triumphant headlines: Iskander strikes Kyiv with precision. Ukraine's defenses helpless. The Russian narrative was clear: this was not just about destroying infrastructure. It was about breaking morale. But in Kyiv, something else was stirring. The people were shaken, yes. But broken, no. Instead of fear, the attack ignited a burning determination. Volunteers flooded into recruitment centers. Civilians rushed to blood banks. Mechanics offered to repair damaged military vehicles, students organized supply drives, and doctors set up emergency medical posts in schools and churches. One young Ukrainian soldier, barely 22 years old, stood on the rubble of the destroyed communication hub. His face was covered in dust, his uniform torn, but his voice was firm. "They think this will silence us," he said, staring into a live camera streaming to the world. "But every missile only makes us stronger. Every strike only fuels our fight. We will not kneel. Not today. Not ever." His words spread across social